which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract for to get paid and do publicity for. This is what you call adult responsibility and accountability. And her actions.
And you can have that in your persona, but when you come out and the freedom of speech was to condemn the very thing that you're paid to build? Are you kidding me?
Even though audiences typically flock to anything bearing the Disney name, this time things have taken a shocking turn. Let's start with the jaw-dropping question on everyone's minds. Could Rachel Zegler play one of the most iconic roles in Disney's history? What if Snow White turned into a real-life nightmare for everyone involved? That's exactly what's happening behind the scenes with Disney's latest live-action remake of the beloved 1937 classic. It sounds crazy that Disney's newest princess would actually have to repay millions of dollars following the film's disastrous box office failure. But hold on, for this tale is more complicated than the evil queen's recipe for poisoned apples.
So how does it feel to join this elite group of Disney princesses? Can you believe it?
No, not at all. It's unbelievable. I mean, I look at that girl and I have no idea what I'm looking at. It's really quite wonderful to be a part of the Disney family, and obviously to join the league of so many wonderful live-action princesses, but also so many that have been depicted in animation as well. This is the flagship animation that made Disney what it is. And
let's start by discussing the numbers to get a sense of the scope of this catastrophe. Disney spent an astounding $270 million on the film, more than the GDP of some small nations. After all, expectations were extremely high because this was meant to be a contemporary retelling of Walt Disney's first animated feature, a pillar of the company's history. However, rather than being a box office classic, Snow White has turned into a warning. A studio accustomed to making billions from its live-action remakes barely made $87 million worldwide, with opening weekend earnings of just $43 million domestically. This result was a complete disaster, not simply disappointing, and Disney execs are not taking it lightly, believe us.
We're crying on that stage.
When am I not crying in public? It's so upsetting.
Why were you crying?
Oh my gosh, I saw well, we didn't even see, but I saw the logo and I went, that's my name, Snow White's up there, and I cried my eyes out.
Insiders say that behind closed doors at Disney HQ, the atmosphere is nothing short of complete chaos. The fallout has been so severe that top executives have been holding emergency meetings to try to figure out how it all went so horribly wrong. To make matters even more shocking, rumors are circulating that Rachel Zegler is bearing the majority of the blame. The 23-year-old actress, who was slated to be Disney's next big star, is now being portrayed as the studio's biggest liability. When you think about it, she was chosen to be the franchise's face and the driving force behind the company's next major attempt to update its classics, but now her name is associated with one of their biggest failures in recent history.
We're still waiting.
You see yourself as the evil queen. You are not evil. You are not evil. You're a queen, but you're not evil. What was it like seeing yourself as the evil queen for the first time?
We did not see the clip, so I still haven't seen anything. But when I was in makeup, just like she said, we got to work with such an amazing crew, and it was just like the best it could ever be.
What precisely transpired then? How did Rachel Zegler go from being a promising newcomer to allegedly having Disney's legal team look into ways to recoup some of her pay? Well, it all began with her interviews, which, let's just say, didn't exactly charm audiences the way Disney might have hoped. In one now famous interview, she called the princess stalker and made fun of the idea of Snow White dreaming about true love, saying that, "We didn't do that this time." She also added that the updated Snow White was more about leadership and independence than romance. While some people praised her progressive stance, others felt that she was dismissing the charm and nostalgia of the original. And let's face it, calling their beloved classic weird is probably not the best way to win them over.
You know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different, and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
But in a time when celebrities are becoming more outspoken about social and political problems, Zegler's remarks about the character weren't the only thing that offended people. Her strong political opinions also sparked uproar. Without, Holding back, Zegler caused a stir on social media when she criticized former US President Donald Trump, stating that she hoped he and his followers would never experience peace. If that wasn't enough to incite some audiences, she also expressed her support for Palestine in a tweet that said, "And always remember Free Palestine." Although some of her fans may find resonance in these remarks, Disney executives were particularly concerned about the backlash her political remarks caused, especially since they came right after the trailer for the movie was released. One source even asserted that the studio had to hire more security for Gal Gadot, who plays the evil queen and is an outspoken supporter of Israel, after Zegler's tweet allegedly resulted in threats against her co-star. Disney's brand is built on broad, family-friendly appeal.
But it's important to speak about her because Disney picked her to be a princess, right? They're doing all these remakes, and they decided they were going to remake Snow White, and they cast Gal Gadot as the Wicked Witch, and they cast Rachel Zegler as Snow White, and it's been interesting casting because this woman is extraordinarily woke, as everyone is in Hollywood, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged. Like, you get cast for Snow White.
Not to mention the drama that goes on behind the scenes. According to several sources, Disney executives were so worried about Zegler's public image that they sent producer Mark Platt to New York to meet with her in person. His goal was to persuade her to stop using such strong language and concentrate on promoting the film. But here's the real deal. Zegler allegedly refused to remove her divisive posts, claiming that she had the right to voice her opinions. In addition to straining her relationship with the studio, this standoff reportedly caused tension with her co-star Gadot, who, let's just say, didn't agree with Zegler on certain political issues. By the time the film hit theaters, the drama off-screen had virtually overshadowed the film itself. What does this mean for Zegler? According to Business Insiders, Disney has been considering using morality clauses or PR performance triggers in Zegler's contract to recover some of their losses. While this kind of action would be unprecedented, it's not completely out of the question given the high stakes. A reported loss of over $100 million, Zegler's public blunders have made her an obvious target for criticism, and Disney is working desperately to contain the damage.
Says Rachel Zegler hurt the film's box office with her actions in since-deleted comment. This is the exchange. Somebody at the top says, by the way, who's the first comment?
However, it's important to remember that Zegler isn't the sole target of criticism. The decision to substitute CGI-created magical gnomes for the iconic Seven Dwarfs, which some saw as a response to actor Peter Dinklage's criticism of the original film's depiction of dwarfism, turned off fans of the original. Others felt that the movie's attempt to modernize the story came at the expense of its heart and charm. Whatever the reason, the end result was a film that failed to connect with audiences on almost every level. And then there's the issue of marketing, or rather, the absence of it. According to some industry insiders, Disney's promotional campaign was remarkably muted, almost as if the studio had given up on the project before it even debuted in theaters. Advanced ticket sales didn't start until 2 weeks prior to the release date, which some interpreted as a sign of low expectations. Even the movie's premiere was trimmed back, with no red carpet interviews for Gadot and Zegler and restricted press access. Rather, with creating anticipation, the rollout felt more like a damage management operation.
The film received backlash for various reasons in the lead up to its release. Zegler had called the original Snow White movie dated and weird and said Prince Charming was a stock.
As the dust settles, it is evident that the fallout from Snow White is far from over. Disney is currently at a crossroads, considering the risks of modernizing its classic tales and its future direction. Rachel Zegler's path forward is equally uncertain. Will she be able to recover from this PR disaster, or will her career as Disney's Golden Girl end before it even started? This is where the story takes an even darker turn. Disney's response to this whole mess has been nothing short of catastrophic, and it appears that the Mouse House is using every tactic in the book to salvage what little reputation it still has. But let's not mince words. This isn't just a failed film, it's a public relations catastrophe of epic proportions. The fallout from Snow White has revealed cracks in the studio's ostensibly unbreakable empire, and Rachel Zegler has found herself at the center of a corporate firestorm. Imagine being chosen as the face of a billion-dollar franchise, only to have your own studio allegedly ghostwrite your apologies and micromanage your every move. This is the reality that Zegler is allegedly living right now. Let's focus on Disney's. alleged damage control strategy because it's a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis. To start, there is the rumor that the company hired a special media consultant to accompany Zegler on her press tour. Yes, you read correctly. This consultant's job was to watch her every word and make sure she didn't say anything else that would start a new social media frenzy. Additionally, there is the theory that Disney's public relations team actually ghost-wrote parts of her public apologies, which weren't sincere. They were well-considered, corporately sanctioned statements intended to quell the fervor. According to one insider, Zegler's apology posts were so meticulously worded that they could have easily been penned by a group of lawyers. If accurate, this suggests that the studio is in complete panic mode and will stop at nothing to preserve its reputation, even if it means putting its top lady in the firing line.
Literally no clue. To conclude that, and I love Platt's first saying, "You really want to do this?"
Yeah.
I love his first
That's
saying,
right.
"You really want to
That's
do
right.
this?"
Yeah.
I love that.
However, let's take a moment to discuss those apologies, because in all honesty, they seem to do more harm than good. Rather than calming the waters, they only serve to fuel the fire. Fans criticized Zegler for being robotic and insincere, and it didn't help that the posts were posted at a ridiculously convenient time, just as the backlash was reaching a fever pitch. Critics claimed that the apologies felt more like damage control than sincere regret, and the internet was quick to call her out on it.
Let's talk, numbers scream. People are screaming. Disney, get it together. Who is the Disney's customer? You talk about this all the time, Pat.
While Zegler was occupied with defending the film from criticism, Snow White's box office receipts had fallen by more than 60% by its second weekend. This was so drastic that it sent shockwaves through Hollywood. For context, as even poorly performing live-action remakes like Dumbo managed to retain a larger portion of their audience in the second week, but Snow White was like audiences couldn't leave it quickly enough. The global numbers were equally grim, with a total take of just over 100 million by the end of its second weekend. The movie was far from recovering its enormous budget, and let's not even mention the marketing expenses, which reportedly added an additional 100 million to the tab.
I care a little bit more about Rachel Zegler having like an underlying amount of contempt for the intellectual property. Like if you're
Here's where things become even more complicated. Industry insiders have begun blaming each other, and the blame game is already on. Some claim that the script's excessive attempt to update the plot alienated both new and old fans. According to some, Zegler's controversial remarks destroyed the film before it even had a chance to succeed. One studio executive even went so far as to say, "She torched a billion-dollar brand in less than a year and we paid her to do it." Others contend that the marketing campaign was a complete failure from the beginning, failing to create any genuine excitement for the film. However, the loudest voices are those that blame Zegler herself. Not only are Disney executives taking notice, but some of Zegler's co-stars have also been notably silent about supporting her character. Girat, who portrays the evil queen, has mostly avoided the drama, but some fans have theorized that there is tension between the two actresses. Keep in mind that Girat is a vocal supporter of Israel, while Zegler has made headlines for her pro-Palestine stance. This ideological conflict reportedly created a tense atmosphere on set, and it's easy to imagine how that tension might have permeated the movie's marketing. Whether or not that is accurate, the sight alone is enough to make you wince. One unnamed insider even asserted that Disney had to give the two celebrities separate press schedules in order to prevent any embarrassing interactions.
And everything, I feel so lucky that I got to play something that is so far from what I know and what I'm used to, and I super enjoyed every second of it.
Additionally, the audience's response has been nothing short of vicious, and memes have taken over social media, caustic remarks, and critical evaluations. For weeks, hashtags like Not My Snow White and Boycott Snow White have been popular, and the memes, they've been vicious. One particularly popular joke asks, "Who asked for this?" and shows a screenshot of Zegler's face superimposed on the body of the original Snow White. Another compares them to characters from a low-budget video game and demonstrates how the CGI produced magical gnomes. Yes, the ones that took the place of the Seven Dwarves. The scores of the film on review aggregator websites are arguably the most striking indication of the backlash, even though it is evident that viewers not only didn't like the film, but also were personally offended by it. even on Rotten Tomatoes. Where Disney films often make a good showing, Snow White presently has one of the lowest IMDb scores in Disney history, with a startling 5 out of 10. To put that into perspective, it is placed lower than notorious flops like Giggly and Battlefield Earth. While some of this can be ascribed to review bombing, a strategy where internet trolls bombard a movie with unfavorable reviews, Snow White's audience score is nothing to brag about. The enormous hatred surrounding this film is difficult to ignore.
Yeah, totally stable thing for her to be posting, wishing harm upon Trump voters, wishing that we have no peace. And I actually thought she wrote the exact statement, Skylar, that she wanted us to have, like she wished explicit harm.
What does this mean for Rachel Zegler's future? Well, that's the big question. Or, perhaps more accurately, the $120 million question. Because that's the amount that Disney is allegedly attempting to recover from her. If the studio proceeds with legal action, it would set a precedent that could send shockwaves through Hollywood. Imagine if every actor had to worry about facing financial penalties for their public remarks or their perceived role in a movie's failure. It's a slippery slope that raises issues regarding free speech, creative freedom, and the balance of power between studios and their stars. However, let's not overlook the human side of this story, that Rachel Zegler is only 23 years old. Although some may argue that Zegler brought this on herself, it's difficult not to feel at least a little sympathy for someone who has been thrust into the deep end of Hollywood's harshest spotlight. Zegler is still relatively new to the industry, and this kind of backlash would be overwhelming for anyone, let alone someone so early in their career. Reports indicate that she has been fighting back tears behind the scenes as she struggles to cope with the sheer magnitude of the criticism.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
After the success of movies like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, it seemed like Disney had discovered a winning formula. But Snow White has shown that audiences won't automatically show up just because a movie has the Disney logo on it. Of course, Disney isn't leaving this unharmed either. The Snow White scandal has forced the studio to critically examine its live-action remake strategy. For decades, the studio has been viewed as a company that could do no wrong. But in recent years, that image has begun to crack with controversies over everything from casting choices to political messaging. Now, the studio is reportedly reevaluating its approach, with some insiders speculating that future remakes might focus more on maintaining the charm of the originals rather than reinventing them for modern audiences. And then there's the larger question of how this will impact Disney's brand. The most recent illustration of how Disney's attempts to update its classics may occasionally backfire is Snow White. The question now is whether the studio can recover dramatically, or if this signals the start of a new, more uncertain period for the house of